So here at the 212 Men Cricket Podcast, we're still reflecting on the T20 World Cup. And being so fan-orientated like we are, we thought we'd get an India perspective. So we've drafted in a very jet-lagged Rakesh Patel, the founder of the Bharat Army. A very good evening to you, Rakesh.
Good evening, guys. Nice to meet you both.
How are things?
Yeah, good. Like you said, still a little bit jet lagged, but I think I'm getting through it now. It was a busy couple of weeks out in Australia, and yeah, it took a few days to recover, let's say.
Yeah, Australia always does that. I was saying to you before we started this about the couple of days it takes just to get used to the time zones. You've just got to get out there, haven't you, and just explore and enjoy the country.
Absolutely.
So, if you don't mind me asking, Rakesh, I know I've always seen the Bharat Army present, obviously India games, and when I've been to England and India games. But I watched a feature on Sky where I think I first came across yourself, and you were talking about the origins of the Bharat Army. Would you like to, I guess, tell us a bit more about how it all started and where you find yourselves today?
Yeah, sure. So I guess my love for cricket came from my father. He's an East African Indian. He was born in Nairobi, Kenya, and actually played international cricket and captained the Kenyan cricket team in the early 70s. So that's where the love of cricket came from me. Unfortunately, his skill missed a generation, and I wasn't as good as him. So instead of playing the game, I ended up supporting the game. And obviously fell in love with the game because my dad played for a few years. When he came to England in the early 70s. He ended up playing at quite a high level in the UK. I used to follow him around the country, watching him play and playing a bit myself. Never as good as him, if I'm really honest. I ended up playing Surrey Championship to a fairly decent high level. But like I said, I guess his talent skipped a generation with me. So, really just ended up, falling in love with the game, ended up supporting the game. And it wasn't until the 1999 Cricket World Cup in England when I actually went to every single India match. Ended up going to Old Trafford for the India-Pakistan game. Walked into the stadium, bought a dodgy ticket, walked into the stadium, and I was surrounded by Pakistan fans. Literally, it was a sea of green. In those days, when India turned up in places like Manchester, which was more, from a population perspective, more dominant with Pakistanis, we were about 70-30 in the stadium. We were completely outnumbered. And I met a few guys that I had a few beers with in some of the other matches, and I said, look, where I'm sitting, I'm completely outnumbered, and I don't think I'm going to survive the whole match. Kind of thing. Can I come and sit with you? Kind of thing, right? By the end of the match, there was about 200 of us who kind of got to know each other throughout the tournament, and we all kind of congregated together. Now, in those days, in '99, there was a lot of political tension between India and Pakistan. Well, there still is now, to be fair. And there was the Kargil war that was happening between India and Pakistan. So the tensions were really heightened. There was like police horses outside the stadium. There's a few riots, and stuff like that. So it wasn't your ordinary cricket match, back then. And so in the stadium itself, there was a lot of tension. So if you can imagine, you've got like two of the biggest sporting rivals in terms of cricket, playing a World Cup match mid in the middle of a war between the two countries, right? But the actual atmosphere and the experience, when we came together as a group of fans, like I said, there was about 200 of us. It was an amazing experience, being united together, supporting the team. We actually won the game as well. And the atmosphere and the experience of actually that togetherness. When I walked out of the stadium, I thought, that was just an amazing experience. And we should have something a bit more organised. We're the most passionate fans in the world in terms of cricket. And we should have something more organised, very similar to the Bharat Army, And so that's where it started, I guess, and that's where, two or three of the guys that I kind of watched that World Cup with, I got them together and I said, look, why don't we just start something ourselves? We travel around the world, we see each other around the world. Let's start something together. And the first tour we did actually was in 2002, went to the West Indies, and a group of us got out there. We got a lot of coverage from the Indian media, said, look, are you the Indian version of the Bharat Army? We went, yeah, kind of thing, and that's where it kind of really started.
Brilliant.
And I suppose, Rakesh, we go from there to where we are today in terms of the Australian World Cup, and we look at kind of the crowds in the last World Cup, and it is very kind of South Asian dominant of, filling the stands, and the Bharat Army is a massive influence on that. how do you get from that position to where you are today? How do you grow? What was the journey like?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of factors, and I get asked that question a fair bit in terms of that journey that we've been on. And the first thing I'll say is that for 15 years, the Bharat Army has always been, I guess, very similar to the Barmy Army and its organic growth, where you've got, cricket lovers all over the world who support the England cricket team coming together in support of the England cricket team, right? And that was no different with the Bharat Army. And actually, very early on, I met Paul Burnham. I said, look, tell me, everything you've done to grow the Barmy Army. I think it's amazing what the Barmy Army have achieved. And I said, I want to learn from you. And Paul was brilliant. He sat down with me. We exchanged sort of our thoughts and ideas, and he still is a very good friend of mine right now. And he kind of really helped and guided us at the beginning. We didn't have any commercial mindset in terms of the Bharat Army for 15 years. I invested a lot of my personal money into the Bharat Army in terms of the small things that you do, right, to kind of create that community. But when we got to Australia in 2015 World Cup, the community grew to a point where people enjoyed traveling as a group like the Barmy Army do with us. They said, look, can you arrange my flights? Can you arrange my match tickets? We want to be seated where you guys are. That's where the atmosphere is, that's where the experience is. And I think we took nearly 500 people out there, where me and a group of us managed the tickets, managed the flights. We hired like these 10 camper vans. We drove around Australia in them. And it was just an amazing experience. I came back and I thought, I can't do that again. That was just too much,
Yeah.
So I got in touch with a friend of mine who's got his own travel company. And I said, look, why don't you do the travel for us for future tours? Yeah. I've got the people, and we can, we could do this together, because it got to a point where, when you got that many people, you can't take people on flights without or travel without a bonded license and that kind of stuff, right? So we had to professionalize it, and that's how it kind of organically grew. And then in 2016, when I came back from the World Cup in India, the T20 World Cup in India, there were two big tournaments in England, the 2017 Champions Trophy and the 2019 World Cup. Yeah. And I came up with an idea that I should pitch the ICC to be the first fan club to have an official travel license, So a friend of mine who worked for Wisden, he got me a meeting with the MD of the Cricket World Cup, Steve Elworthy at the time. Yeah. I said to him, Steve, look, I've got an idea. No one's done it before. Give us a chance, kind of thing. Give us a license. And he loved the idea. He said, right, let's just do it. I'll give you a chance in the Champions Trophy. So we set up an official license. We used that tournament really just to learn. We brought just over 1,500 fans from India. We had around 3,000 fans in the UK that attended every one of India's matches in Champions Trophy. And we used it as, like I said, a platform to really learn, right, how to create experiences in a packaged way where effectively, commercially, you can charge for it. Through that experience, 2 years later, we brought over 11,000 fans from 23 countries around the world. Countries where I didn't even know Indian fans lived or existed, if I'm honest with you. Like, there was Indians in Mexico that booked through us. There was Indians in Cambodia that booked through us, all across Europe, all over the world, basically. And they just wanted to be part of the Bharat Army experience. What they see on TV, they said, you know what, I want to be part of that. So it was a really kind of simple thought logic behind it, in that, you know what, we create this atmosphere, this experience. If you want to be part of it, you can be. And this is how you join us. And that's how it sort of grew commercially. And then from that, we had a lot of, brand sponsors, some of the biggest companies in the world wanting to partner with us because they saw our following and our brand as a way of elevating their brand at a big tournament. So, the likes of Hublot and Coca-Cola, these are some of the brands that we've done partnerships with, that see a real value in what we offer. So that's how it's commercially grown. But like I said to you, the first 15 years, there was no commercial mindset behind it whatsoever.
In terms of kind of the support that you got from the Barmy Army, is that something that do you work with other fan groups now? Is it kind of like are you in competition with each other, or is it kind of like a community mindset across international fan groups? How's that work?
I mean, for me, I don't think it matters how you're labelled, as long as your objective is to support the team, right? Whether you call yourself Bharat Army or whatever you might want to call yourself, the objective, as long as it's common, that we want to support the team and back the team, that's what it should be all about, right? And you always get other fan clubs that, I guess, want to replicate what you do, or actually want to do what you do, in different guises, and that's fine, right? I mean, the Barmy Army, I guess have the official England cricket supporters group as well that do exactly what they do as well, but they're just doing it a different way, and that's fine as well, right? So
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it competition necessarily. I feel people will probably look at what we do and they try to replicate what we do, you know, and I guess with Indian cricket fans, there's so many of them, and everybody will have a go, if that makes sense. But I think what we've got is quite unique, you know, in that it's organically grown. We're well recognised now within media and with fans all over the world, and most importantly, the players. You know, the players really value and recognise our support, and you know how we continue to support them, you know, through tough times. You know, so that's how it is. And I think it's the same with the Barmy Army, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people sometimes miss the point, really. They take a bit of issue, obviously, the fact that the Barmy Army will obviously make a degree of profit, I guess, by arranging cricket trips. But being someone who's travelled on international tours, you know, the Barmy Army certainly enhanced the experience of watching England cricket overseas, you know, whether that's buying the shirts, whether that's getting songs going. So I think a big part of that is like what you say, Rakesh, to bring the experience. I don't think... I spent all my time working in an office that is full of different nationalities that aren't necessarily cricket nations or cricket fans, should I say. And I'm always reminding them the actual levels to what comes of Indian cricket and how important cricket is to them. And we've recently, you know, had some other South Asian sort of nations come into the office, like Sri Lankans and some Indian staff now. And now we get a bit of a community within the office. But I don't think in all my years of watching cricket, I've ever seen a spectacle like I saw at the MCG for the India-Pakistan game. Can you actually describe how good that was, and can you put it into words that what you experienced that night or that day?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I've been to see quite a lot of India versus Pakistan matches in World Cups over the years. I mean, very early on, my father took me to watch India versus Pakistan in Bangalore back in 1996. I've seen pretty much every India-Pakistan World Cup match since then, if that makes sense. I've travelled all over the world watching them. But I have to be honest, I've never experienced anything like what it was like at the MCG. I think the build-up to the match was quite big in itself, just because of what had happened over the last couple of years with Pakistan beating India, you know, and breaking that jinx that they had of not beating us in World Cups, you know. But then to have... you know, over 80,000 fans outside of India and Pakistan in a stadium like that in such a big match. You know, I mean, if you put that into context, even like the FIFA World Cup that's happening right now, you don't get that many fans traveling in those sort of numbers, right? So that just puts it into context. You know, to have, and we had probably around, I'd say 70% of the stadium, you know, in terms of crowd in that match. But the build-up was phenomenal, you know. Just we had a pre-match party where I think we nearly had 1,000 people that turned up to it, and I was talking to a few of the people, and they'd flown in from all over the world, you know, just for that 4-hour match, if that makes sense. You know, travelled halfway around the world like me, you know, from England to Australia to watch, 4 hours.
It seemed to be me like the perfect advert for international cricket and how we can sort of grow this game, because you had a tightly contested game. You had a huge crowd in either in India or Pakistan, and probably the biggest one of the biggest cricket grounds in the world. And obviously the result of the fact that Virat Kohli was so pivotal, the most popular figure, I guess, India cricket, actually being the spearhead to victory. And I think it really put cricket on a massive stage. And I think the T20 stage, in terms of the T20 World Cup, it's the greatest fixture I've ever seen.
Well, I think if you were to script that match, I don't think you could have scripted it, in a better way, right? I mean, in terms of, like you said, the match was amazing. It swung both ways, throughout the match. And, for Virat Kohli, who, again, hasn't been in great form, right, to actually deliver that level of performance in front of that crowd, and to finish it at the last over, almost the last ball, was just, you couldn't script it that way. I was speaking to Cricket Australia's chief executive, Nick Hockley, the day after, and he had lost his voice. I said, Nick, what's happened? Were you supporting India? And he goes, I had to shout to the person sitting next to me just so they could hear me. And he goes, that's why I've lost my voice. I goes, that's amazing.
And can you tell me about the noise? Because I recall Virat Kohli being interviewed after the game, and he's trying to listen to the questions. I can't remember who's delivering the questions, but he's just saying, I simply can't hear you. And he actually asks the crowd to quieten down, doesn't he?
Yeah, I don't think you can appreciate it unless you were there, if I'm really honest.
No.
But it was really interesting because during that phase when Pakistan were on top, you could hear a pin drop, literally. Apart from when obviously something that went for Pakistan and that their crowd got going, but the Indian fans just went really quiet because there was that kind of mindset that, oh my god, they're going to beat us again, kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
But then it turned, you know, and then when it turned, the crowd was just, you know, again, like I said, I've seen India, Pakistan all over the world. In India in particular, I saw them in Calcutta, Eden Gardens in 2016, and I thought that was a noise, right? There was 60,000 there, but this was like something I've never experienced before, and I think it's very difficult to kind of describe that emotion and you know that atmosphere. Again, I've heard the Indian national anthem, you know, and sung it myself all over the world, right? And I've never been emotionally moved. I'm not an emotional person, if I'm really honest, right? But I was emotionally moved by actually singing that national anthem. And you could see the effect it had on Rohit Sharma. Rohit Sharma is not an emotional person. He shows zero emotion. You know, even he had to take a step back and had to look in the sky and close his eyes because, you know, it was something special. You know, to hear, you know, 60, 70,000 fans away from home singing that national anthem, it's something special. And even now when I watch it back, I get goosebumps.
It's grandkids kind of stuff, isn't it? It's things you'll probably remember forever. And hopefully more of it, which kind of, I guess, leads me on to the question of, there's a lot spoke about the future of cricket and where it's heading from a format point of view, which formats are sort of flourishing and which formats are struggling. But you being so close, I guess, to the Indian supporters, do you sort of feel that you can put your finger on the pulse of where Cricket India is viewing cricket at the minute? I know there's this unbelievable domestic league in the IPL, but I know how passionate the fans are about the national side. Where is Cricket India at from a fan perspective?
I think fans are divided, right? If I'm really honest, I think there's a lot of people like myself who are cricketing purists who, you know, love Test match cricket. You know, I love Test match cricket. That's that's the number one format for me. And there's a lot of Indian fans who are similar to myself, you know, who are not these IPL junkies. You know, I'm not a big fan of IPL. I'll watch it for a bit of entertainment, but I won't watch it religiously like I'd watch Test match cricket, you know. So I think Indian cricket fans are very divided, right? I think now more than ever, you know, they feel that the IPL is actually hampering the progress of Indian cricket, you know, particularly in terms of things like team selection and how, you know, certain decisions are made around team selection in Test match cricket because of what people do in other formats of the game and stuff like that. And there's a lot of people who hold that similar view, you know, to myself, you know, in that, you know, we for example, we've been very rigid in terms of, you know, how we select captains. You know, we've always sort of had that kind of one captain for all formats, right? And for the first time now, we're probably going to rip up the rule book on that and probably go with the England model, which is to have multiple captains. And look what it's done for England, right? You know, so I think we have been kind of, like I said to you, quite rigid in our approach to how we look at different formats of the game and how we prioritize different formats of the game. And we've got to start looking outwards, you know, and start looking at what other countries have done to be successful, you know, and England have proved it, you know, they've been successful in Test match cricket over a period of time. They're successful in white ball cricket now, you know, so I think it's high time now because we haven't achieved, you know, what we wanted to achieve across these formats, that we start looking outwards and stop looking inwards.
And in terms of kind of the future of the Army, do you ever see yourself as being being an organisation that would get involved in the IPL, or is it solely India that your focus is on? How, onwards and upwards, where do you see yourselves going?
Yeah, I mean, we have started to sort of offer IPL products, if that makes sense, to some of our customers and members. You know, we've got, you know, a really varied, you know, kind of group of members who actually, you know, want to buy these kind of packaged experiences, if you want to call it that way, right? And that includes the IPL. You know, so we partner with some of the IPL franchises, and we can offer the experiences that they offer in the Bharat Army way, right? But beyond IPL, we're also now supporting other sports, and you know, have been doing that for quite a while socially for our social media, because we recognise that, you know, as an Indian fan club, even though we support cricket, you know, that if we can replicate this model to other sports, you know, then we can do that, and we do that in different ways. So pre-pandemic, you know, we raised money to support 3,500 government-based children play in like an Olympic style event in Mumbai. We funded for them to be able to take part in that, and they've actually played all the sports apart from cricket, believe it or not, right? So, and we're trying to sort of identify, children at grassroots level so they can flourish in the sports that they want to play and love. We've found scholarships for, this is Gail, for example, is an amazing story that we funded for her to get trained by a professional boxer in Mumbai, and she won a gold championship, beating a national title holder, and now she's got a scholarship in one of the best boxing schools in Asia, right? So that's the kind of stuff that we want to contribute towards, where we can make a real difference outside of cricket as well.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose thank you very much for your time, Rakesh. It's brilliant to talk to you, and I suppose from a one fan channel to a fan organisation like yours, it's kind of a great symbol and a beacon of hope of what fans can do to the game that they love in terms of getting involved, spreading the love, and I suppose that's what sport is all about, really, is kind of fans coming together to enjoy something that they love. So thank you very much for taking your time to speak to us.
And if I can almost add there, I think what this tournament's just shown us is how important India are to the international game with the numbers that you turn up in. I think your organisation certainly plays a massive, massive part in that. So from the cricket world perspective, I think we owe you a lot of gratitude for that. Yeah,
and I think, look, from my perspective, the game's nothing without the fans, right? And one of the pleasures that I get travelling around the world is getting to meet like-minded people who love the game, like I do, and those experiences, those friendships, they stay with us forever, So likewise, I think it's amazing that we've got this global community of cricket fans who love the game as much as we all do.
Yeah. And before we sign off, Rakesh, is there any? I know you're obviously very well known, but for folks that are looking to connect with you further, is there? I know you've got loads of incentives running, but what's the best way that they can start to get to know you better? And perhaps if they're attending a match, the best way to find you? Although you're very loud, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, socially, you can follow us across all our social handles at the Bharat Army. Go onto our website, bharatarmy.com, register and become a member. We offer free membership and paid membership to get a premium service. But other than that, just join in and join in the fun. That's all I can say.
Okay. Rakesh Patel from the Bharat Army, thank you very much. And we'll look out for you soon.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Take care.